So, welcome to this week's episode of the Lovefly podcast. And today we're joined by Barb Molt, which, for those of you in the Lovefly Facebook group, you would have seen their contributions like tons and tons of times. So, you'll probably be very familiar with them. And this is a chance to meet Barb, but also it's 1 a.m.
Yeah.
It's time. Oh, my goodness. So, thank you so much. Yeah, it's like a reasonable cynic clock here, but it's 1 a.m. for you. So I'm very grateful. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting me to do this.
No, absolute pleasure. I think that we've been very grateful because I know John invited you on. We've seen loads of your posts and super supportive. So we're intrigued and we thought we got to hear your story. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I've been married for 35 years. My husband and I, we have our own business. We're software developers. That's what we do for money. For fun, I'm a musician. So I do that. I have my degree in music, but learned all the computer stuff because there's not a lot of money to be made in music these days, unless you're really, really good.
Yeah, I've got what sort of musician are you? What sort of stuff do you do?
I play the trumpet and I play in big bands, brass quintet to brass dectet. I actually did, they're just in here in Reno. One of the women directors founded an all-women big band, so we have an 18-piece all-women big band I play in, which is really cool.
I love the big
song.
It's just
Remarkable.
Oh, yeah.
And I love British brass bands too. I listened to the band used to be one of my favorite shows that I'd get off the internet.
So there we are. That's mutual appreciation. Okay, yeah. So you got that. You got business. Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted your flow there.
Oh, no problem. I guess that's about what we're doing now. I'm a new grandma. I have a 9-month-old grandbaby, and so that's pretty much us at this point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your link into how you joined us. But yeah, just a bit background. Yeah.
Yeah. The first time I flew, I was 8 years old and really didn't think much about it. Didn't realize that my mom was a fearful flyer till I saw her drinking a bunch of martinis before we got on the plane.
Okay.
We were moving from Arizona to California, and my dad and brother were bringing the dogs and that, so they drove, and my mom and I flew. So we flew from Phoenix to LAX. And this is 1968. So to get to Ontario, which was near our house, we had to take a helicopter shuttle. So I just thought that was really cool. So I thought it was really loud and I liked looking out the window. So at that point, I wasn't really afraid. And then it never really occurred to me as a kid that we never flew anywhere. My dad would rent a motorhome every summer and we'd drive up the coast and we'd go visit people, and that's kind of how our vacations was a motorhome. And I didn't really think about it that we never flew anywhere. So that was my
secret, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah. So bunch of time passed. I ended up going to college in Boston. And my friend and I drove out to Boston because we decided to make a big cross-country trip out of it and see a bunch of people. So we got to Boston and I was in college. And about my second year of college, my mom was diagnosed with leukemia. And so I wanted to go home to see her. Yeah. And so that meant flying. So I booked a flight, got on the flight, didn't think anything about it, and then suddenly realized that I was absolutely terrified. So it was just, I white knuckled all the way home, and it was just, I was just miserable. And I was 25, so that was the first time I'd flown since I was 8.
So what sense do you know what it was that you were worried about at that point?
I think it was just I realized that I didn't have any idea of how airplanes worked. That I didn't know how this giant thing could stay up in the air. I didn't know what the sounds were. I didn't know what any of the sensations were. I was completely ignorant about flying. And I kind of stayed that way. I mean, I flew back and forth a few times while I was at school, and came back home to California. And basically, I just decided that, well, I'm a fearful flyer, so I don't like to fly, so I'm not going to do it. And just, I mean, that was just kind of how I decided I was. And didn't really fly for quite a while. In 1989, I got married and we flew to Disney World, and same thing, white knuckled all the way back. About 10 years later, we took another trip, and I know my husband was really kind of disappointed. He understood. He was really, really supportive. And I feel bad for like people I see on the Facebook group whose spouses and partners are not supportive of them and don't understand their fear. So I was really lucky that my husband was very supportive. But I knew he was kind of disappointed that we couldn't go places that he wanted to go to. Um, so where else? Let's see. We flew to Disney World with our son. We flew to Washington D.C. with our son. These trips were spaced probably about 8 years apart, and I, I just never. I just sort of was like, I'm just a fearful flyer. I'm just gonna white knuckle the whole way there and back, and that was that. And as we started getting older, we started talking about, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could go somewhere like Europe? We'd never been out of the States. So my niece was getting married in Tennessee, and we flew there, and just start for whatever reason, I just started thinking about it. I'm thinking about, why am I so afraid of this? What is it that I'm
when was
afraid
this
of?
sort of Tennessee trip?
This was in 2022.
Right. Okay. So,
So
so this is quite an embedded fear. So you're
yeah,
flying in frequently. When you do, you're holding the aircraft up, and you know.
can't go to the bathroom because that was, if I go to the bathroom, then I'm going to cause turbulence and the plane's going to crash. So I can't go to the bathroom.
Okay. So that's just
Yeah.
so before we get into your kind of like what you did, it's just it's quite helpful for people to because sometimes, and I'm sure it's been the same for you, when someone listens to somebody who's overcoming their fear of flying, they always think, yeah, but you weren't as bad as me. So I think it's quite nice to get a bit of without dwelling on negativity perhaps, but I think it's just quite interesting to. So when you flew, did you have any sort of anxiety before you would take flights?
Oh yeah, the anticipatory start at least a week before the flight.
Right.
My thoughts were always just catastrophic the whole time. I hear other people talking about this, and oh yeah, I had that exact same thing, just horrible thoughts. Couldn't sleep the night before. Had to have some drinks before I got on the plane when we were at the airport. So yeah, so many of the things that I see people
Yeah.
were the exact same things that I was doing. Yeah.
So
It
you
was,
get
it
to the
was
flight.
brutal.
And you'd literally just stay in your seat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Gripping my husband's hand until it turned white the whole time, and the seat rest on the other side. And yeah, it just, I never had panic attacks or anything like that, but it was just a constant anxious anxiety the whole time, especially when turbulence hit. Turbulence was a huge thing for me. Yeah, it was, turbulence was really one of my big things for sure.
yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you what sort of like the triggers. So what was the longest flight that you were doing without leaving your seat?
Without getting up to go to the laugh. Well, I could go pretty long, 4 hours or so.
Oh my God.
There's here in Reno, our airport's pretty small, so there aren't that many direct flights to anywhere. So like if we went, all the way across the country to Florida, we'd have to have a layover somewhere. So, one flight would be 3.5 hours and the other one would be, another 3 hours or something. So um, which I also hated that too, because I didn't want to have to do 4 flights. I wanted you just get there and get back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a pretty debilitating fear. It really was.
And so I'm guessing then that with that experience that you weren't able to then to do many trips that didn't involve,
Right.
You were just driving everywhere still and
Yeah. Yes. Luckily we live near one of the most beautiful places on earth, Lake Tahoe. So, I mean, that's only 45 minutes away from us. So we'd go there, we'd go further north to another lake, and we're down to Southern California where some of our family is. But yeah, and we just, I knew he wanted to go other places, and as we were getting older and thinking, well, it'd be nice to do this while we can, while we could still walk around. So you started talking about it, and I just said, I got to do something about this,
Yeah.
you know?
So this was around the Tennessee flight. You were
Yes. Yes.
okay,
It was
2022. So you're
after.
getting up to date.
Yep. Yep. Got back from that, and I said, I got to fix this. And so we started talking about where we wanted to go, and every few weeks we look at different places and start planning things. And in the meantime, I just started analyzing and thinking about my fear. What was I really, really afraid of? What was going to happen? And for me, it pretty much just boiled down to a fear of fear. Um, the upshot of anything that would happen would be the plane crashing, and oh my God, what a fearful experience that would be. So that's basically what it boiled down to, was just a fear of fear. And so then I'm like, okay, well, what is it that scares me in the flight? Well, turbulence. Okay, well, I don't know what turbulence is, so maybe I had to find out what it is and
So
why it's
I ask you
safe.
why 20? So why then? Because you've had, if you think back, I'm thinking I've got the timeline right. So it's sort of 89 through to 2022. There's like various flights along the way. But why
Yeah.
then did you suddenly go, I've got to do something about this?
Because I wanted to see things. I wanted to see other cultures. I mean, the United States is a child, right? I mean, we're a couple of 100 years old, and Europe is just so many fascinating things in Europe or Japan. I know my husband really wants to go to Japan. So like I said, we're getting older and thinking, well, we're not going to be able to do this very often because they are expensive trips.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I remembered a book, and I'm sure you've seen me post this on the Facebook group, many, many years ago, when I was involved in, just another job. I got turned on to a book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And it was about how what you say to yourself really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And you actually create patterns in your brain with the things that you say to yourself. And the more you say those things, especially negative things, the more your brain is absolutely happy to make you feel however the way it is that you're telling it to feel. So if I'm constantly telling myself I'm afraid of flying, I'm afraid of flying, I'm afraid of flying, why am I surprised that I'm afraid of flying? I have been telling myself that for years. So I said, well, no more of that. That's got to stop right now. I am an uncomfortable flyer, and that's it. I'm not afraid, and I'm going to learn about flying and understand why it's so safe, because everybody's like, well, it's the safest form of transportation there is. So that's the other thing. So those are the two main things I did. Was I changed my self-talk, and I started learning all about aviation, and got hooked on some great YouTube sites, and just watched videos, listen, and man, finding Lovefly was like one of the big game changers for me too, because the podcasts were great. That led me to other stuff, that I could think about and learn about. And so somewhere in there, when we were talking about somewhere to go, we finally decided to take a cruise around Italy and Croatia and Montenegro. And so we booked that way, way ahead of time. So I had plenty of time to like work on this. So I just kept digging into it, the podcasts, the reading, everything. I just kept doing it.
So let's give us a bit. So just to help people to so people who might want to role model what you've done. So 2022, you've come back, you've done the Tennessee thing. You're thinking, right. So we're in 2025 now, at the time of recording. So we're looking at, what was the first thing you did? So you've got this book. Could you just repeat the name of it again?
What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmestetter. It's an old book, but it's really valuable, and the way he talks about how we program our brains and how we can reprogram them is done in a very readable, understandable way.
Okay, so that was you went back to that. You started then you analyzed what you're doing in like what is it you're fearful of. So you started to look towards that and started looking around lots of YouTube stuff. I was curious, like you said something about that you changed the way that you spoke to yourself, and I wondered how how you did that, how much effort that took to do that.
It did take quite a bit of effort, because I told myself for decades that I was a fearful flyer. But I didn't want to be anymore. I mean, one thing I always loved about flying was takeoff. Absolutely love taking off. I'm kind of a speed freak. I rode motorcycles, and so takeoff was fun for me, but that was the only part. Yes. Everything after that was awful. Um, so yeah, it was just constant working on it, thinking about it every day, doing something, every single day doing something, because I knew it was going to take a long time to reprogram my brain to not be afraid. So it just every day I did listen to a podcast, made sure that I told myself that I wasn't afraid of it. And getting on Lovefly and being able to answer people's questions because of the knowledge that I had gained, I think that really helped me too, to be able to say, no, planes just can't fall out of the sky, wings can't fall off, all these things that we think can happen that I thought could happen can't. I mean, it's physics. So learning all that was incredibly helpful.
Sorry, can't see that. I was going to say one of the things when I first saw you start posting, I can't tell you what I was going to ask you that, but I noticed that some of your posts are such quality. I thought, this is a pilot. Because some of your answers are so technical and correct. I was like, this is a pilot. This is an aviation. Honestly, yeah. So when did you join us and start doing all that?
Oh gosh, it's got to have been right around 2022 or 2023 when I joined you guys and started. And yeah, as far as that's funny that you say that I've got to be a pilot. One of my things was always, if I could fly the plane, I'd be fine. Because I mean, I kind of have some control issues. I don't like anybody else to drive. I like to be the one driving. So I would always just say that in jest. If I could fly it, it would be great. I wish I'd done this a long time ago, because like Gita, she's an incredible inspiration to me. And I probably, if I was 20 years younger, I probably would go, and I might go take a discovery flight just for the heck of it, just to see what it's like flying in a small plane. But yeah, my days of learning to be a pilot are probably not here, but that's okay. And I have a friend who has an aviation business. He's got a Citation jet. He keeps threatening to take me up in that, which I think would be a hoot. So yeah.
What's happened to you?
So,
Crikey. So talk us through. So you're doing all this sort of, it sounds like you're doing quite a lot of work. It's like a daily thing by the sound of it.
Yeah, just making sure that I did something every day about it. We booked our trip way in advance. So the trip was for May 2024.
Right.
So it was about a year ago was our big trip. Booked it way in advance, so I knew, I kept looking at what planes I was going to be flying on and looking them up, because they change them all the time anyway. So, I kept, going, oh, what am I be flying on? How old is it? Which, I mean, none of that bothered me or scared me. I was just curious. I was interested in it, what kind of plane it was. And so we had that booked. We booked it like in October of 2023. And then right before Christmas, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And suddenly we had no idea if we'd be able to go on this trip or not, because we didn't know what was going to happen. So real long story short, luckily everything worked out. I had the best kind of breast cancer you can have if you've got to have breast cancer. I didn't need chemo. If I'd had to do chemo, we wouldn't have been able to make the trip. But I managed to get done with surgery and radiation and everything else before we had to leave, and enough time to recover. So really lucky there. And that really changed my perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
You've probably seen me, I say on a lot of the posts, I say, now I get to fly. So my perspective has changed for sure. The trip was amazing. Like I said, we'd never been out of the States. So, I mean, I think the longest plane ride I'd been on before was probably maybe 5 to 6 hours. So here I've got a 1 hour flight from Reno to San Francisco, and then an 11+ hour flight from San Francisco to Frankfurt, and then another 1.5 hour flight to Rome. So, wow, that's just, a whole long day, night of traveling.
Yeah.
So, and it was marvelous. I had no anticipatory anxiety at all. I still had a couple drinks before I got on the plane. I patted the plane when I got on, which I've always done. And it was absolutely fantastic. I had a great time. Wasn't afraid of turbulence, just kept saying that it's only uncomfortable, not dangerous, and that's it. And so since May, I've done 16 flights, six of them solo. Yeah, yeah. We got back from our trip, so that was 6 flights for that trip. I took just a short flight down to Southern California by myself to go hang out with some friends. And then came back. Then I did. I flew to Hawaii by myself to go visit another friend, and that was 2 flights each way, and a 6 hour flight over the ocean. And then we just got back from another cruise a few months ago where that was another 4 flights. So yeah, 16 flights in about a year. So, and they were all fantastic. Actually, my last flight coming out of San Francisco was pretty turbulent on the takeoff. And so that one flight was the one where I experienced the most turbulence that I had. All the rest were pretty smooth, and I was okay. I got startled because there was a big bump, and I got startled, but then I was like, oh, it's okay. It's okay.
I like the fact you mentioned that, because this startle thing is something which people automatically think is like a bad thing. So some people say, so I heard people say there's really bad turbulence, everyone screamed, and we're all scared. I think actually that's an assumption. What happens is anything that you're not expecting is going to create a startle effect. And people might go, oh, what's that? And then,
Yeah.
if those with the fear will go, that means something. Then, for those, like most of us in that situation, will have exactly the same reaction, including the crew. They're not expecting it. Anything that their faces will be, oh, what's that? But and sometimes that's enough for people to go, and the crew look scared too. And I like the fact that you just mentioned you had a bit of turbulence, and then it's what you did next is what I want people to take from this podcast. It's like what you did, some thought replacement or thought challenge or something in a very natural way.
Yes. Yep. Only uncomfortable, never dangerous.
There you go.
So, so the other things I did, because I love the checklist, that's fantastic. I also like the introductory letter. That was one of the things I always tried to do even before, was to meet the pilots, because I was being able to put a face to the person whose life I just put in their hands, always comforted me in some way. And I always found that the pilots were always just amazing. And the introductory letter is just so marvelous, because you don't have to interrupt the flow of boarding. You can just hand it to the flight attendant when you get on, and go get your seat. And then, and I always put on mine, if they're not too busy, I would love to meet the pilots. And most of the time I do. They'll come and get me and take me up to the cockpit on our flight from San Francisco to Frankfurt in a 777. The captain let me sit in his seat. And so it was and I met all the rest of the pilots there, and they were just so nice and so kind. He showed me all his tablets and all his stuff and where it might get bumpy, and just so nice. And flying back from Hawaii, the captain, she came back to my seat with her tablet. She talked to me for about 10 minutes. She'd been flying for 35 years. I asked her, how many times have you been in extreme turbulence? Because I read people about their experiences and they're like, oh my God, the turbulence was horrendous. It was awful. It sounds like you experience extreme turbulence all the time, just from what people say. And she said, well, in the 35 years of flying, I've been in it twice. And so I'm like, well, okay, so the turbulence that I'm experiencing, is not as bad as I think it is. And I asked a flight attendant too on one of my flights. It got pretty bumpy for a little while. And I said, well, was that moderate turbulence? And he looked at me and he kind of smiled and he goes, no, that was really just some light turbulence. And I'm like, oh, okay. So really, we're not really ever in, any kind of really, really rough turbulence. It's really rare. So I took, that was one other thing I took just from meeting pilots and talking to crew.
That's a really good point, actually, Bob, because a lot of people say we were in severe turbulence the whole way. And I said, well, no, you weren't.
Yeah.
That's very clearly defined. At worst, you might have been. And if it's been severe the whole way, in its actual classification, they would have been thinking,
right,
hey, we need to change course. We need to get higher, lower, whatever. Because it's sometimes really uncomfortable, and it must. So your 35-year pilot, what she talked about, being a couple of examples. Yeah, I think about it. I only flew for 5-6 years when I was cabin crew. I think probably once, if that. And it's probably just a moderate, to be honest. And I had a couple of go arounds, but it's the stuff of folklore, but it's so shared with appetites, but people over fixate on it. So I love your approach.
Yeah, I haven't been in a go around yet, so
what's one of them. It's fun.
I bet. I think I think it would be.
I was tell a quick story. I was doing a flight to Dublin once, and it was with a client, and it was nothing to do with fear of flight. But she told me, because I've got 2 worlds that I work in, and she told me, she said, I know you do this fear of flying stuff. I've got to tell you, I'm a nervous flyer. And I said, well, you're in luck. I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for the next hour. I'm going to tell you everything that's going on. And so I talked her through the flight. As this would have it, we came into land and we did a go around. She was, so was that? And I said, well, I did ask the pilot. No, I didn't. I said, and I just talked her through it. And on the way back, I fell asleep and she was absolutely fine. And I just thought, it's just, you just got to do these things and know in that moment, like you asking the cabin crew, what is this right now? And they say, actually, this is light. Then you can calibrate, can't you? And so I think that's really
Yeah. Yes, it is. Knowledge really is power. It really, really is. Yeah. Well, that's pretty much my story. I think that there was something else that I wanted to mention. I'll get back to it. Maybe I'll look through my notes real quick.
Yeah, that's right. No rush. I think listen to your story, Bob, what I really like is how much you've done a couple of things there. So although you've sort of said, I did panic attacks and stuff, but you've got a prolonged anxiety throughout the whole flight and you're avoiding it. And so whilst panic attacks are horrible, you're doing stuff which is just as unpleasant for people, which is like being anxious the whole time, avoiding these things, manage around them. So, and you've managed to get past that. I was curious about patting the blade thing. What that was about. Is he still do that?
I think I do still do that. I think that's a ritual a lot of people do, especially people that have a fear of flying. You're kind of like, good plane. So yeah, I know a lot of people have a lot of different rituals, and and they become crutches in a way that I think it can be helpful, but sometimes not, because if you have to do something in a certain way every time and then suddenly something happens and you can't do one of those things, then you become very anxious.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about you have to, with the drive in the car thing, is that still a thing for you? Like
Yeah, it is.
I was just curious.
I like to be in control, and funny thing about that, I had a gig on Friday, and my friend I met him at his house, and we drove out together, and he has a Tesla S, and which is a really nice car. And as soon as he got on the freeway, he had it drive us all by itself all the way there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for somebody who's got control issues about driving, it's like you're gonna let the car drive. It was amazing. It's an amazing piece of technology. It went really well. He even, I mean, he's ready if he has to, grab the wheel, but he even let it go through a roundabout on its own. And
What?
so, yeah,
It can do that.
it's amazing. They're incredible cars. But yeah, I still have that control issue for sure. I just think I saw a meme the other day. It says, there's so many millions of drivers in the world. Why is it that I'm the best one?
I just a curse you have to carry. Is so in terms of then recommended resources, so you mentioned the book and you went into lots of places. So maybe some safe links. So I'd like to know from the podcast which ones were the most useful to you. And then secondly, what other sources you went to that people could then, look at because you've already checked them out.
Right. Let's see. Out of the ones that I've listened to recently, I can't remember her name, but she's the owner of the company that made the safety cards.
Bishop,
That I thought, yeah, I thought that was a great episode because it was really interesting to me. And then the statistics that she had about people that survive incidents, especially in the earlier years, were the people that read their safety cards and knew what they were supposed to do. So that, and I was one of those people who said, okay, I'll glance at it and that's it. But now I'm like, I read it, I look, I count the seats, I do all that now, and I never used to. So that was a really good one. I'm trying to think of the other ones. God, one of your most recent ones is somebody, he had like a 26-year fear of flying. I can't remember his name, but that was a great episode
Dean
too.
Thomas is that one where he
I
went
think
so he just
yeah.
stand on the cruise and surprised him.
Yes, yeah. So I love all the podcasts. I think they're just hearing regular people and hearing people that have gotten over their fear is I mean, that was incredibly helpful for me too. Getting over my fear was knowing that people had done it,
Yeah.
you know. So and also just knowing that I wasn't alone in this fear too, because I mean, I think everybody, well, especially before the internet and all that, I mean, you didn't have that kind of conversations with people, so you didn't know that there were a lot of people that were afraid of flying. So I think just being able to connect with other people like that is incredibly helpful. Having people track you, I mean, that's it. It almost seems like a really silly thing, please track my flight, but it makes a difference, knowing that there's people out there.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how that helped.
It just makes you feel like there's people that have your back. There's somebody out there watching you going, hey, I see you, you're 30 minutes away. It's just a little kind of comfort thing. So, and I'm happy to do that for people. A lot of time, because of the time difference between here and you guys, and most of the people on Lovefly are in Europe or the UK, and so often I'm asleep when people are flying. So,
Well, it's interesting.
yeah,
30% of in the US and Canada.
Oh, cool.
So you've got got quite a good representation. It might even be more. I know the podcast is UK then US in terms of the listenership, and then there's about 60 countries that download it, which is bizarre, isn't it? Think of all these
Oh God, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so you like good podcast? I'm with you. I like stories. Although some people really like the technical ones, and they're really helpful. But I really like listening to people's stories because I'm always curious, and because it teaches me as well. It's like that's why I always ask, what made you make the decision then, like you did in 2022? Because But you could have done it at any point. Why then? And this could be quite helpful for people. And then what did you do exactly? Then someone can replicate it. Because I think, well, Barb seemed like a normal person, and you've had this fear for a long time. Yeah. And so, and then just being able to sort of hear, actually, it's possible. 16 flights.
Yes.
It's just,
Yeah. 16 really fun flights. Yeah. It's and now I love it. I just think it's so much fun. I always liked sitting next to the window. And I have a fear of heights too. But that never got triggered in flying because I don't know, I just thought the plane is so big. It's so solid. It's just like, my fear of heights is more of standing on a balcony in a high building. It's like that freaks me out. So I didn't feel like that on a plane, and I always loved looking out the window. Where else can you see the view of our world other than in an airplane like that? I mean, it's amazing. It's incredible.
So
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you actually, so I'll come back to that. I'll part that. But in terms of other resources that you looked at, you said you looked at them to sort of YouTube stuff. Was there anyone in particular that you found helpful?
I did read the SOAR book. I got something out of that, and I read a couple other books whose names I can't remember. I'm really bad with names and things. See, there's that self-talk right there. I'm really bad with names about things. I need to stop telling myself that. But yeah, I read some, and out of all the books I read, there was something in each book that I got out of it, whether it was a piece of technical knowledge, a way of thinking about something, an explanation about something. So I mean, I usually suggest to people just find all the fear of flying books you can and read them, and something will click with you about that. I watched a lot of videos. I got hooked on Big Jet TV. Um, he's amazing. And I started just watching takeoffs and landings for airports that I was going to go to. So I'd see what that was about. I also got hooked on a channel called 7-4 Gear. And this channel's not for everybody. If you've got a fear of flying, his name's Kelsey. He's a cargo pilot and flies the 747, and he sent him videos of incidents, and these are mostly general aviation incidents, not commercial. And then he'll try to explain what happened. And so a lot of his explanations about what happens in these incidents is really, you really get a lot of knowledge of planes and how they work, and what did this pilot do wrong. And again, I'm mostly talking about general aviation, not commercial, because I don't want
And
to
it doesn't worry you at all. Doesn't disturb you?
no n- no, it doesn't anymore. Yeah, it used to, but I think exposure is good. Planes pretty much fly right over my house coming into land in Reno, so I see them all the time. That was another thing. When I was afraid of flying, I'd like look up and see a plane coming in and go, "Gosh, I wonder who are all those people that are on that plane? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? What are their stories?" And so that kind of used to interest me a lot, just to think about that. And another thing about turbulence, Reno is we're in a valley with mountains all around. It's very often turbulent landing and taking off here in Reno, which is common just because of the way the mountains and the hills are. And like a month or so ago, it was super, super windy, and I saw a plane coming in. I couldn't see it moving at all. And I knew that those people up there in that plane were really getting bumped around because it was super windy. But you couldn't see it at all from outside looking at the plane. So
Well,
I
let
thought
me
that
just come back
was
to that.
really interesting.
So that is something that one of our pilots, who Captain Steve, heard on the podcast when we does our face-to-face courses. He says that's one of his ways he talks about turbulence. He holds up an mini aircraft and says, "This is from the outside. This is what it looks like." And you've just described that perfectly, because from the outside it's not moving much at all, is it? But from inside it can feel quite rock and roll.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So what's the best bit about flying for you?
Oh, I would definitely have to say the takeoff because it's just so much fun, especially if you get to do, a rolling takeoff where you're taxiing and then you can immediately take off. So you just, do that power and the noise and it's just fun for me. Yeah, I just like that speed and seeing the speed because when you're flying and you're cruising, you can't tell how fast you're going.
No, no.
So that really the takeoff is the only point in time when you can tell how fast you're really going or landing.
Mm.
That's cool too. I had a nice firm landing in Hawaii. The pilot told us it might be a little bumpy because the trade winds were whipping up, and it wasn't very bumpy, but he definitely put it down because I imagine it was pretty windy up there. He's like, well, we need to get down.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
that was kind of interesting.
you okay?
Yeah, it was all right. I think I got a little oof when we hit, but yeah, it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in a few firm landings over the years, and they do sort of like take you by surprise, don't they?
Yeah.
Just shows how strong these things are, doesn't it? They can do.
Oh man. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I know I read somewhere too. It's like a firm landing is a good landing.
Yeah, Steve always says that as well. Yeah, he said that's good. It's good. It's a good thing. You want to know it's on the ground, particularly in the wet.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
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 So thank you so much. I can't believe that you've stayed up so late to talk to us. I'm very grateful to you for that.
Oh, no problem. I was just so happy you guys invited me to do this. So I really, really appreciate that.
Well, so just before we go, if you had to give a final tip or a little bit of a nugget of wisdom for somebody listening, goes, yeah, it's all right for me. What would yours be?
My top two: change your self-talk, learn everything you can about aviation, because knowledge really, really is power. If you know what's happening, why would you be scared? I mean, we're scared because we don't know what's happening. It's out of our comfort zone, out of our knowledge. So, hearing the landing gear coming up, seeing the flaps move around. Once you know what it's for, then it's no longer a mystery.
Love
It's
that.
no longer scary.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Barb, thank you and thank you for all that you do in the Facebook group. I'm hoping that you're able to stay in there, giving your knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. That's the other thing. I know that I need to keep doing stuff. If I don't, those old patterns will probably come back. So that's why I'm on the Facebook group every day, and I just keep at it, keep learning more stuff.
Yeah, I see you on there all the time. I was just
Yeah.
thinking, that's why I suspected you were a pilot. Now I know you're not. But
No, but that cracks me up. That really cracks me up.
well, you learn.
I wish I was.
And
I do play Microsoft Flight Simulator though, so
well, yeah, pretty much,
yeah.
you may get a challenge from Gita around the too late to become a pilot type thing. So I'm just going to warn you. She may well message you to try because she's recruiting the pilot academy of flight pilots.
Oh, that's awesome! How cool is that? That's great.
That's a joke. But I think she probably would if she could. She might be on. You might be on her hit list. Just to warn you.
Okay, let's. Well, I look forward to that.
Barb, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much, and thanks for all you've done and all you continue to do every day. And
Yeah.
keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing. What a great story.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, you guys are a large part of why and how I got to where I am. So thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.